Captain Deho stood on the bridge of his reconnaissance ship, staring at the display screen with tired eyes. 3 months into a routine deep space survey mission, and nothing unusual had happened. His crew was getting restless. Navigator Jiwoo adjusted the scanners for the 100th time that day. While Communications Officer Hannah played with her console settings out of pure boredom, "Captain, I'm picking up something," Jiwoo said suddenly, sitting up straight. "It's faint, but it looks like a distress signal." Deho moved to her station. Location: 2 light towers from our position. The signal is weak and breaking up. Any identification codes? Deho asked. Hannah worked her console quickly. "Negative, sir. The signal format doesn't match any known registry. It could be a smuggler vessel or something worse." Deho thought for a moment. Protocol said they should report it and move on. But something in his gut told him to check it out. Taemin prepped the boarding equipment. "We're going to take a look." The engineer nodded and headed to the equipment bay. 2 hours later, they approached a small, damaged vessel drifting in space. The ship's hull was scarred with weapon burns, and its engines were dead. "Life signs?" Deho asked. "Multiple contacts, Captain. At least 15, maybe more." "They're weak, though," Jiwoo reported. The boarding team suited up. Deho led them across to the damaged ship, cutting through the airlock with plasma torches. The interior was dark and cold. Their helmet lights swept across corridors filled with debris. "This way," Taemin said, checking his scanner. "The life signs are concentrated in the cargo bay." What they found in that cargo bay would change everything. 12 holding cells lined the walls, and in each one were children. Human children. Their ages ranged from maybe 6 years old to early teens. They were thin, dirty, and terrified. Some cowered in the corners of their cells. Others stared with empty eyes that had seen too much. "What the hell?" Hannah whispered, her voice shaking. Deho felt ice flood his veins. "Get these cells open now." As they worked to free the children, one girl stepped forward. She looked about 13, with tangled hair and bruises on her arms. Despite her condition, she held herself with dignity. "Are you really from Earth?" she asked in a hoarse voice. "Yes," Deho said, kneeling to her level. "We're taking you home." "What's your name?" "Yuna," she said, and then her composure broke. Tears streamed down her face. "I've been gone for 3 years. They told us no one was coming. That Earth didn't care about us." The team worked quickly to move all 12 children to their ship. Medical Officer Suben was waiting in the medical bay. As she examined each child, her face grew darker with anger. The children showed signs of malnutrition, dehydration, and physical abuse. Their hands bore calluses from hard labor. Once the children were settled, Deho sat down with Yuna. She was the oldest and seemed to be the leader among them. "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked gently. Yuna took a shaky breath. "I was on a colony ship with my parents. We were heading to New Soul Settlement. One night, everything went wrong. Alarms everywhere. Then these aliens came. They were big, gray-skinned with 4 arms. They grabbed all the children they could find and left. I never saw my parents again." "How long ago was this?" 3 years ago, but some of the others here were taken longer ago. The oldest case is little Minho. He's been gone for almost 10 years. Ho's hands clenched into fists. "What did they do with you?" "They sold us," Yuna said flatly. "Like animals. I worked in a mining facility on a planet I can't even pronounce. 14-hour days? If you didn't meet your quota, you didn't eat. Some of the younger ones were sold as servants to rich families. They treated us like pets." "How did you end up on that ship?" "It was a transport vessel. They were moving us to a new location for sale. But something went wrong. I think there was a fight between the crew. Maybe a dispute over money. The ship got damaged, and they all killed each other. We've been drifting for 5 days with no food or water." Subin approached with a report pad. "Captain, you need to see this. Every child here has similar stories. They were all taken from Earth colony ships over the past decade. This is systematic kidnapping and slavery." Deho stood up, his mind racing. "Hannah, send an emergency transmission to Earth Command immediately. Priority Alpha. Include everything. Video evidence, medical reports, the children's testimonies. Everything, yes, sir. As Hannah prepared the transmission, Deho returned to the children. They were eating their first real meal in days, though many struggled with the food after so long with barely anything. Yuna sat apart from the others, staring out a viewport at the stars. "You promised we're going home?" she asked without looking at him. Double quotes. "Yes, I promise. There are more of us. Hundreds, maybe. I heard the traders talking. They said human children were valuable because we're small, smart, and adapt easily. There's a whole market for us across the Vorten Empire." The Vorten Empire? That's what they called it. The gray ones with 4 arms. They run a huge part of the galaxy, and they think humans are nothing. Just primitives from a backwater planet. Deho put his hand on her shoulder. "Yuna, I need you to tell me everything you know about this empire. Locations, numbers, anything you remember. Can you do that?" She looked up at him with eyes that were far too old for her age. "Will Earth come for the others? The ones still enslaved?" Deho met her gaze without hesitation. "Yes, I promise you that." 36 hours later, the transmission reached Earth. Admiral Kung-Su was in a routine briefing when his aide interrupted with the emergency message. He watched the video in silence, his face becoming harder with each passing second. The footage showed the children in their cells. It showed their injuries. It showed Yuna's testimony, spoken in a calm, dead voice that somehow made it worse. And it showed their faces when they realized they were being rescued. The hope, the disbelief, the tears. Kung-Su stood up slowly. "Get me the president. Get me the defense council. Get me every ship captain in range of Earth. Do it now." His aide hesitated. "Sir, what do I tell them?" The admiral's voice was cold as deep space. "Tell them we're going to war." On the ship, Deho sat with the children as they made their way home. Little Minho, only 8 years old, sat in his lap and fell asleep for the first time in days, without nightmares. Yuna and the others talked quietly among themselves, making plans for what they'd do when they got home. "Captain," Yuna asked, "what will happen to the Vortens? The ones who did this to us?" Deho looked at her, then at all the children watching him with desperate hope in their eyes. He thought about what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. He thought about what would happen when Earth saw these children and heard their stories. "Justice," he said simply. "Justice will happen." The news hit Earth like a nuclear bomb within 6 hours of Admiral Kung-Su receiving the transmission. Every major news network on the planet was broadcasting the footage. Parents watched in horror as children described years of slavery. The image of young Yuna, thin and bruised but speaking with heartbreaking dignity, became seared into humanity's collective consciousness. In Seoul, Yuna's parents Dongwoo and Sumin saw their daughter's face on the news. They had been told 3 years ago that the colony ship suffered a catastrophic failure. All children aboard were declared lost. They had mourned their daughter and tried to move on with shattered hearts. Now they stared at the screen as Yuna told her story. Sumin collapsed, sobbing. Dongwoo grabbed his phone with shaking hands and called the emergency hotline that had been set up. Within minutes of the broadcast, "That's my daughter," he said, his voice breaking. "That's Yuna. She's alive. My baby is alive." Similar scenes played out across Earth. Parents who thought their children were dead discovered they had been enslaved instead. The grief turned to rage. The rage turned to something much more dangerous. President Murray called an emergency session of the United Nations. Every nation's representative attended. The chamber was dead silent as she spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, we face an unprecedented crisis. Over the past decade, at least 800 human children have been kidnapped and sold into slavery by an alien empire. This is not a tragedy. This is an act of war against our entire species." She paused, letting the words sink in. "I am invoking Article 7 of the Earth's Defense Charter. As of this moment, we are in a state of war with the Vorten Empire. Every resource, every ship, every weapon we possess will be dedicated to bringing our children home. And we will show these aliens exactly what happens when you harm a human child." The vote was unanimous. Every single nation on Earth, with all their historical conflicts and differences, united behind one goal. Diplomat Jae-sung was given an impossible task. He was ordered to open communications with the Vorten Empire and demand the immediate return of all human children. The diplomatic channels were cold and formal. When he finally reached a Vorten official, the response was insulting. "Your species is barely space-capable," the Vorten representative said through the translator. "You have no legal standing in galactic affairs. The acquisition of labor resources from primitive worlds is within established economic practices. This conversation is terminated." The transmission ended. Jae-sung sat in his office, hands trembling with anger. He sent his report to President Murray with a simple note. "They refuse to negotiate. They don't see us as equals. They see us as livestock." Admiral Kwang-soo began the largest military mobilization in human history. Every combat-ready vessel was activated. Reserve forces were called up. Commander In-ho, one of Earth's most decorated soldiers, was given command of the ground assault divisions. "I need volunteers," In-ho told his assembled officers. "This won't be easy. The Vortens have superior numbers and technology. But we have something they don't understand. We're fighting for our children." Every single person in the room volunteered. In the weapons research facility, Dr. Yoonji and her team worked around the clock. They pulled out experimental designs that had been shelved as too dangerous or expensive. Nothing was off the table now. "We need weapons that can level the playing field," she told her team. "We need them fast. And we need them to be devastating." Meanwhile, in the shadows, Earth's intelligence networks activated. Agent Bin received his orders and left Earth on a stealth ship. His mission was simple but deadly dangerous: infiltrate Vorten space, locate the children, and gather intelligence on their military capabilities. Bin was good at his job. Within 2 weeks, he had slipped past Vorten border security and established a cover identity as a trader. He visited spaceports and markets, listening carefully to every conversation. What he discovered made his blood run cold. The trade in human children was vast and organized. There were established supply chains, auction houses, and distribution networks. The Vortens considered it a minor but profitable business. Children were valued for their small size, adaptability, and intelligence. They worked in mines, factories, and wealthy households across dozens of worlds, been sent encrypted reports back to Earth every few days. Each report contained locations, security details, and estimated numbers of children. The information was painful to read, but absolutely necessary. Back on Earth, the rescued 12 children were healing. Yuna and her parents reunited in a moment that was broadcast across the globe. When Sumin saw her daughter in person for the first time in 3 years, she couldn't speak. She just held Yuna and cried. The reunion was bittersweet. Yuna was different now, harder. The innocent child who left on that colony ship was gone, placed by someone who had survived hell through sheer will. "Mom, Dad," Yuna said quietly, "I need to help. There's so many others still out there. I know things, places, names, how their systems work. I need to tell the military everything." Dong-woo wanted to say no. He wanted to wrap his daughter in safety and never let her think about those terrible years again. But he saw the determination in her eyes and knew he couldn't stop her. "Okay," he said, "we'll do this together." Yuna and the other rescued children became invaluable sources of intelligence. They spent hours with military planners describing every detail they could remember. Little Minho, despite his young age, drew detailed maps of the mining facility where he had worked. Another child named Jisoo described the security systems at the auction house where she had been sold. The information painted a picture of an empire that was vast but arrogant. The Vortens had conquered dozens of species over the centuries. They were powerful and they knew it. They never imagined that primitive humans would dare to challenge them. Emperor Krell sat on his throne in the Vorten capital, receiving reports about Earth's military buildup. He listened with growing amusement. "These humans think they can threaten us," he said, his forearms gesturing dismissively. "They have barely left their own solar system. We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. His military advisor, General Threx, was less confident. My Emperor, their ship movements suggest serious intent. Perhaps we should consider returning the human juveniles as a gesture of goodwill. Krell laughed, a harsh sound. Goodwill? They should be grateful we find any use for their offspring. Ignore them, General. They dare to enter our space, destroy their ships, and take more of their young. Perhaps that will teach them their place. Threx bowed and left, but privately he was troubled. He had studied the transmissions from Earth. He had seen the cold fury in their military leaders' eyes. He had read the public statements calling for total war. These humans didn't sound like a species that would back down. On Earth, the final preparations were complete. Admiral Kyung-Soo stood before a holographic display showing the Vorten Empire's territory. Red markers indicated known locations of enslaved children. Blue markers showed Vorten military installations. Yellow markers showed potential strategic targets. Commander Inho joined him, along with President Murray and the Military Council. We're ready, Kyung-Soo said. The first wave can launch within 12 hours. Rules of engagement? Inho asked. President Murray's voice was hard as steel. Priority 1 is the children. Get them out safely. Priority 2 is sending a message. Any Vorten facility involved in the slave trade is a legitimate target. Use whatever force is necessary. And if they try to negotiate after we hit them? Someone asked. Murray looked around the table. Then we'll talk. But only after every single child is home. Not before. Make sure the Vortens understand that. As the meeting ended, Kyung-Soo pulled up a personal message on his tablet. It was from Yuna. Thank you for believing us. Thank you for coming. Some of the kids here think they'll never get home, that they'll be slaves forever. But I told them about you. I told them Earth doesn't abandon its children. Please prove me right. The Admiral closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with renewed determination. He sent orders to the fleet. Operation Reclamation begins in 12 hours. Commander Inho studied the holographic layout of the Vorten mining facility one more time. Intelligence from Agent Bin indicated 50 human children were imprisoned there, working in dangerous conditions, extracting rare minerals. The facility was lightly guarded because the Vortens never expected an attack. They were about to learn differently. Team leader's final check, Inho said over the secure channel. His strike force consisted of 30 elite soldiers divided into 3 teams. Team leaders Jihin Wonjek and Young Ya confirmed they were ready. Remember, Inho said, the children are priority. Get them out first, everything else is secondary. The Vortens will be bigger and stronger than us, but we're faster and smarter. Use that. The stealth ship dropped them on the night side of the mining planet. They moved through rocky terrain under triple moons, their advanced armor keeping them invisible to Vorten sensors. The facility sprawled across a valley, with the main mine entrance lit by harsh lights. Teams 2 and 3 moved to the extraction points, Inho ordered. Team 1, you're with me. We go in through the maintenance tunnels. They split up. Inho's team reached the maintenance entrance, and Jihain used a plasma cutter to slice through the lock. Inside, the tunnels were dark and cramped. Perfect for humans, difficult for the larger Vortens. The first guard they encountered was alone, checking a power junction. Kyungya took him down silently with a neural disruptor. He dropped without making a sound. They moved deeper into the facility. Through ventilation grates, Inho could see the main mining chamber. His jaw clenched at what he saw. Children, some as young as 7, were operating heavy equipment under the watch of Vorten overseers. The kids were covered in dust and moving like zombies from exhaustion. One small boy stumbled and dropped his tool. A Vorten guard raised a shock prod, Inho said coldly. His team burst through the grate, weapons ready. The chamber erupted in chaos. Vorten guards reached for their weapons, but Inho's team was faster. Precise shots dropped 3 guards in seconds. The others scrambled for cover. Children, get down. Inho shouted. Most of the kids hit the ground immediately. But one boy, maybe 11 years old, didn't run. Instead, he grabbed a metal pipe and smashed it into the knee joint of a Vorten guard who was aiming at Inho's team. The guard howled and fell. Nice hit, Inho said as he reached the boy. What's your name? Hyen? the boy said. His eyes were hard and angry. Are you from Earth? We're taking you home. There are more kids in the sleeping quarters. Section C, lower level. They're locked in at night. Team 2, did you copy that? Inho said into his cum. Copied, one chick replied. We're heading there now. But things weren't going smoothly everywhere. Younga's team had run into heavy resistance at the eastern extraction point. The Vortons might have been arrogant, but they were trained warriors. Their energy weapons packed serious punch. We're pinned down, Young-Ya reported, breathing hard. Multiple hostiles. Can't reach the extraction point. Hold position, Inho ordered. Reinforcements coming, he turned to Jahayan. Get these kids to the rally point. I'm going to help Young Year. Sir, you can't. That's an order, Lieutenant. Jihian saluted reluctantly and began herding the children toward safety. Young Haiyan stayed close to her, helping calm the younger kids, who were terrified by the sudden violence. Inho raced through the corridors toward Young Ye's position. He could hear the energy weapons fire echoing off the metal walls. When he rounded the corner, he saw Young Ya and her team behind makeshift cover, facing at least 10 Vorton soldiers. A Vorton guard noticed Inho and turned to fire. Inho dove, rolled, and came up shooting, which weapons beam caught the Vorton in the chest, dropping him. The distraction gave Young Ye's team the opening they needed. They advanced with brutal efficiency. Above the facility, Captain Deho's ship waited in orbit with several other Earth vessels. They weren't alone. 3 Vorton warships had detected their presence and were closing fast. Captain, enemy vessels approaching, Navigator Ji Woo reported. They're powering weapons. Launch fighters, Deho ordered. All weapons hot. Protect the strike team below. Pilot Sung-hoon launched his fighter along with a dozen others. The space battle began immediately. Vorton ships were larger and more powerful, but the human pilots flew with desperate courage. Sung-hoon's fighter screamed through the void, dodging energy blasts, targeted the lead Vorton ship's weapons array and fired. His missiles struck home, triggering a chain of explosions. One down, he reported, grinning fiercely. Who's next? But the remaining Vorton ships weren't backing down. They launched their own fighters. And the space around the planet became a deadly dance of ships and weapons fire. On the ground, One Sheik's team reached the sleeping quarters. The doors were sealed with electronic locks. One Sheik placed charges and blew them open. Inside, 20 more children were crowded into a room meant for maybe 10. They looked up with terrified eyes as armed figures burst in. We're human, One Sheik said quickly, removing his helmet so they could see his face. We're from Earth. We're here to rescue you. A small girl started crying. Then another. Then they were all crying, reaching for the soldiers with desperate hands. Everybody stay calm, One Sheik said, though his own voice was rough with emotion.
We're getting you out.
I promise. The evacuation was working, but time was running out. Vorton reinforcements were pouring into the facility. Inho knew they needed to leave soon, or they'd be overwhelmed. All teams, converge on Extraction Point Alpha, he ordered. Fighting retreat. Move. Gahayan held the extraction point with her team and the first group of children. When she saw more Vorton soldiers approaching, she made a decision. Get the kids on the transport now, she told her team. I'll hold them here. Lieutenant, you can't hold that position alone. Just go. Jihian set up behind a barricade with her weapon and spare power cells. When the Vorton soldiers rounded the corner, she opened fire with everything she had. She didn't try to kill them all, just slow them down. By time for the children to escape, a Vorton blast hit near her position, showering her with debris. Her armor took damage but held. She kept firing, methodical and precise. One target, then another, then another. She was running out of power cells when One Sheik appeared beside her. Told you to go, she said. Yeah, well, I never follow orders, One Sheik replied, adding his fire to hers. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't do anything stupid. Together, they held the line just long enough. The last transport lifted off with the children secured inside. Inho's voice came over their coms. Jihai and One Sheik fall back to the secondary extraction point. Now. They ran Vorton soldiers on their heels. The facility was coming apart around them as systems failed from all the damage. They reached the roof where a smaller transport waited. Young Yao was at the controls. "Get in," shouted. They jumped aboard, and Young Yao pulled up hard just as the roof collapsed behind them. The transport climbed toward orbit, shaking from weapons fire, but staying intact. In space, the battle was ending. 2 Vorton warships were destroyed. The third was retreating, badly damaged. Sung Hoon's fighter was limping but functional. All craft returned to base, Captain Daeho ordered. Mission accomplished. Aboard the command ship, Inho did a head count. 50 children rescued, 3 soldiers wounded, none killed. It pulled off the impossible. Young Hyen stood next to him, looking out at Earth's fleet. "You really came," he said quietly. "I told the others Earth would come, but some didn't believe me." Inho put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "We'll always come, that's a promise." The news of the successful rescue reached Earth within hours. The images of smiling children being reunited with medical staff made people cry with joy. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. Admiral Kung Su reviewed the mission reports with satisfaction. Then he pulled up the complete intelligence file. Over 700 children still remained in Vorton space, scattered across dozens of worlds. "Launch the next wave," he ordered. "We're not stopping until we have them all." In the Vorton capital, Emperor Krell was no longer laughing. He watched the footage of the mining facility raid with growing fury. "These primitive humans dare attack us," he roared. "General Threx, mobilize our fleets. Crush them." But General Threx, watching the same footage, noticed something troubling. The human soldiers fought with a ferocity he'd never seen before.
No.
They didn't retreat when faced with superior numbers. They didn't surrender when wounded. They fought like every single child was their own. That kind of determination was dangerous. The war spread across 3 star systems like wildfire. President Murray addressed the United Nations for the 3rd time in as many weeks. Her face was harder now, aged by the burden of command. Behind her, a holographic display showed the growing conflict. "The Vorton Empire has mobilized their full military might against us," she said. "They expected us to back down after the first battle. Instead, we freed 143 more children. They're learning what every human already knows. You don't touch our children." The chamber erupted in applause. But Murray raised her hand for silence. "However, I won't lie to you. The cost is high. We've lost ships. We've lost soldiers. Good. People who gave their lives so children they never met could come home. Over 600 children remain enslaved. This war is far from over." She paused, her voice dropping to something cold and absolute. "But let me be clear to anyone listening, human or alien. Every child will be returned, or every Vorton world will burn. There is no middle ground. There is no negotiation. There is only total victory or total war." Deep in Vorton space, Agent Bin was no longer operating alone. The revelation of child slavery had shocked many species in the galaxy. Some were allies of the Vortons and stayed silent. Others were horrified and angry, Bin found unlikely friends. A merchant named Vela, from a species that resembled 6-legged cats, approached him in a spaceport bar. "I hear you're looking for human children," Vela said quietly. Bin's hand moved to his concealed weapon. "What do you know about that?" "That the Vortons are evil and someone should have stopped them years ago." Vela pushed a data chip across the table. "That's the location of 3 slave markets. I've done business in these ports for 20 years and watched them sell children like cargo. I'm ashamed I never did anything." Bin took the chip. "Why help now? Because you humans are actually fighting back. The rest of us just complained quietly and did nothing. That makes us cowards." More aliens joined what became an underground network. A former Vorton soldier named Court, disgusted by his empire's practices, defected with military codes and patrol schedules. A doctor from a peaceful species provided medical supplies for rescued children. A pilot offered her ship for covert operations. Together, they began sabotaging the slave trade from within. Markets mysteriously lost power during auctions, letting prisoners escape. Transport ships suffered navigation failures that stranded them in human-controlled space. Supply depots exploded for no apparent reason. The Vortans were fighting a war on two fronts: the human military assault and an insurgency. In their own territory, Admiral Kung Su launched Operation Hammer, the largest offensive yet. The target was Carthex Prime, a heavily fortified Vorton, a stronghold that intelligence suggested housed over 300 human children. Commander In-ho stood in the assault shuttle with his now famous strike team. Jihane checked her weapons one final time. Unchik reviewed the tactical maps. Youngya led them in a moment of silence for fallen comrades. "This is going to be rough," In-ho said honestly. "Carthex Prime isn't some mining facility. It's a military fortress. But those children have waited long enough. We're bringing them home today." The assault began with orbital bombardment from Earth's fleet. The Vorton defenses were strong, but Dr. Yunji's new weapons were stronger. Experimental plasma cannons that she'd designed tore through their shields like paper. "Shields down on target area," Captain Daeho reported. "Ground teams, you have a window." In-ho's shuttles screamed through the atmosphere with dozens of others. Vorton fighters rose to meet them, and the sky became a battlefield. Pilot Sung Hoon was leading the fighter escort, his skills now legendary. "Stay tight on the transports," Sung Hoon ordered his squadron. "Nothing gets through." A Vorton fighter locked onto In-ho's shuttle. Before it could fire, Sun Hoon's fighter appeared from nowhere and destroyed it. His ship took damage from the explosion, but he stayed in formation. "You all right up there?" Eno asked. "Weapon systems damaged, but I can still fly," Sung Hoon replied. His ship started smoking, but he refused to pull back. "I'll stay as long as you need me." The shuttles landed hard under heavy fire. In-ho's team charged out, weapons blazing. The battle for Carthex Prime was brutal. Vorton soldiers were everywhere, prepared and determined. But so were the humans. Jia Hyan's team encountered a fortified position blocking their advance to the detention center. The Vorton defenders had heavy weapons and good cover. Normal assault would be suicide. "Give me covering fire," Ji Hyan said calmly. Before anyone could stop her, she sprinted directly at the position. Energy blasts tore through the air around her, but she kept moving, using rubble for brief cover. She got close enough to throw a thermal grenade, then dove behind a wall as it exploded. The Vorton position was destroyed. Jahian stood up, bleeding from shrapnel wounds, but still moving. "Lieutenant, you're hit," Wonshik said, running to her.
"I'll live."
"Keep moving." They fought through 3 more defensive lines before reaching the detention center. When they blew open the doors, they found the children inside, locked in cages, stacked 3 high. The conditions were horrible. Some kids were sick. All were terrified. Among them was young Hyen, who'd been recaptured 2 weeks after his first rescue when Vorton forces raided a refugee convoy. His face lit up when he saw In-ho.
"Right, Yan?"
"Told you, Hyen," said to the other children. "Told you they'd come back?" But getting the children out was harder than getting in. Vorton reinforcements were pouring into the area. The evacuation point was under constant attack. Above the planet, the space battle had turned desperate. Captain Daeho's ship was heavily damaged. Pilot Sung Hoon's fighter was barely functional, held together by emergency patches. "Captain, I'm out of weapons," Sung Hoon reported. "But there's a Vorton command ship breaking through to fire on the evacuation zone." Daeho watched the situation unfold. If that command ship reached firing position, it would kill hundreds of soldiers and all the children they'd just rescued. "All ships, focus fire on that command vessel," he ordered. "Our weapons are depleted, sir," his tactical officer reported. "We can't stop it." Sung Hoon's voice came over the calm and certain. "I can—" "Negative, pilot. Stand down." "Sorry, Captain. Not this time." Sung Hoon turned his crippled fighter toward the command ship and pushed his engines to maximum. The Vorton saw him coming and opened fire. But he wove through the barrage with skill born from desperation. At the last second, he ejected. His fighter, traveling at incredible speed, slammed into the command ship's bridge. The explosion tore through the vessel's command structure, crippling it instantly. Sung Hoon's escape pod tumbled through space until a rescue ship snagged it. When they pulled him out, he was unconscious but alive. On the ground, the tide turned. With the command ship destroyed, Vorten forces lost coordination. Inho's team successfully evacuated all 326 children from Carthex Prime. The cost was high. 47 human soldiers died in the assault. Hundreds more were wounded. But when the transports carrying rescued children reached the medical ships, and doctors saw the grateful tears of kids who thought they'd never escape, they knew why those soldiers had sacrificed everything. Ambassador Jae Sung made one final attempt at diplomacy. He arranged a secure channel to the Vorton capital and addressed Emperor Krell directly. "This can end now," Jae Sung said. "Return all human children immediately, and we'll discuss peace terms." Krell's response was to have 10 human prisoners, adults who'd been captured trying to rescue their own children, executed on live broadcast across the galaxy. "That is my answer to human demands," Krell declared. The broadcast reached Earth. President Murray watched it with Admiral Kyun-soo and the military council. The room was silent for a long moment. "No more prisoners," Murray said quietly. "The Vortons just chose their fate." Kung-soo nodded. "Agreed. From this point forward, this is a war of extinction." Word spread through the human forces. The rules of engagement changed. Vorten military installations were no longer just disabled, they were destroyed completely. Vorten warships that surrendered were still destroyed. The Mercy Earth had shown, despite everything was gone now, it's burned away by those 10 executions. General Threx watched from the Vorten military headquarters as battle reports flooded in. System after system was falling to human forces. Their new weapons were devastating. But worse was their absolute determination. "My Emperor," Threx said carefully, "perhaps we should reconsider. The humans are not backing down. Our losses are becoming unsustainable." "Silence," Krell roared. "We have ruled the galaxy for millennia. We will not bow to primitives." But Threx could read the data. The war was turning against them, and the humans showed no sign of stopping until every last child was recovered. On a medical ship, Una volunteered to help comfort newly rescued children. She'd become a symbol of hope, the first child saved who now helped save others. Young Hyein worked beside her, his own trauma transformed into purpose. "How many more?" a little girl asked Una. "How many more of us are still out there?" Una hugged her gently. "I don't know, but Earth is coming for all of them. That's what we do. We don't leave our people behind." The human fleet assembled at the edge of Vorten space, larger than anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. Admiral Kwang-soo stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking at tactical displays showing allied ships from 6 other species who joined the cause. The revelation of systematic child slavery had turned galactic opinion against the Vortons. Species that had stayed neutral now provided ships, supplies, and intelligence. The Vorten Empire, which had ruled through fear for millennia, suddenly found itself isolated and surrounded. "All fleet commanders report ready," Admiral Commander Inho said. He'd been promoted after Carthex Prime, and now coordinated ground operations across the entire war zone. "Then let's finish this," Kung-soo said. Launch Operation Final Dawn. The fleet moved as one, jumping to multiple Vorten systems simultaneously. The strategy was overwhelming force at every point. Give the Vortons no time to regroup, no space to retreat. Commander Inho led the assault on the largest remaining slave processing center. Intelligence from Agent Bin indicated over 300 children were held there. It's the biggest concentration still under Vorten control. His strike teams had evolved into a finely tuned machine. Ji-hyen, now fully recovered from her wounds, led the breach team. Wonshik commanded the extraction units. Young-ya coordinated air support. They moved through the facility like a force of nature, but they weren't prepared for what they found. The Vortons, desperate and vicious, had chained the children together in the central chamber and surrounded them with armed guards. When Inho's team breached the walls, a Vorten commander shouted at them, "Stand down, or we execute the humans." Inho froze. His team held position, weapons ready but unable to fire without risking the children. The standoff stretched for agonizing seconds. Then young Hyein, who'd insisted on coming despite everyone's protests, stepped forward. He was wearing a simple combat vest and carried no weapons. He walked calmly toward the Vorten guards. "Hien, get back," Inho shouted, but Hien kept walking. He looked at the other children, meeting each pair of terrified eyes. "Remember what I told you?" he said in a clear voice. "Earth doesn't abandon us. These soldiers will get us out, but we have to be brave too." The other children, inspired by his courage, started standing up despite the chains. They weren't cowering anymore. They were standing tall, looking their captors in the eye. The Vorten commander hesitated, confused by this display of defiance. That moment of hesitation was all Ji-Hyen needed. Her shot took the commander down. The rest of Inho's team opened fire with absolute precision, targeting only the guards. The battle was brief and decisive. Within minutes, all the children were free. Hien stood among them, helping younger ones walk, his face showing a fierce pride. "Kid, you've got the heart of a warrior," Inho said, gripping his shoulder. "I learned from the best," Hien replied, across Vorten space. Similar raids were happening simultaneously. Agent Bin personally led a team that freed 70 children from an auction house on a core world. Captain Daho's ship provided orbital support for 3 separate rescue operations. Pilot Sung-hoon, cleared for flight duty after recovering from his injuries, destroyed 2 Vorten patrol ships that tried to interfere with an evacuation. The coordination was perfect. The execution was flawless. By the end of the operation, 847 children had been recovered, but the celebration was bittersweet. During the rescues, human forces had discovered burial sites at several facilities. They found evidence of children who hadn't survived their captivity. 89 names were added to the memorial list. 89 families who would never get their children back. President Murray addressed Earth from the Situation Room. Behind her, images of rescued children played on screens. "Today we brought home the last of our stolen children," she said, her voice thick with emotion. 847 beautiful, brave children are coming home. But we also learned that 89 others didn't make it. They died alone, far from home at the hands of monsters. She paused, wiping her eyes before continuing. "To the families of those 89, I promise you this. Your children will never be forgotten, and those responsible will face justice." The human fleet now turned toward the Vorten homeworld. Emperor Krell, watching the approaching armada, finally understood that his empire was finished. "Contact them," he ordered General Threx, offered terms of surrender. "My Emperor, after the executions, I doubt they'll accept. Do it anyway." But it wasn't Threx who made the call. It was the general himself who contacted Admiral Kyung-soo on a private channel. "Admiral, I am General Threx of the Vorten military. I wish to discuss surrender." "You wish to surrender?" Kyung-soo said coldly. "Yes. Emperor Krell's regime is finished. I'm prepared to remove him from power and hand him over to face justice. In return, I ask that civilian populations be spared." Kyung-soo considered. "All children are recovered? All living ones, yes. And I have full records of those who died. Names, locations, circumstances. Everything will be turned over to your investigators and the people who ran the slave operations. I will provide a complete list. Every slave trader, every guard, every official who profited from this evil, they're yours." The conversation was recorded and transmitted to President Murray. After consulting with her advisors, she made the call. Accepted, but Krell stands trial. Public trial. The galaxy needs to see justice done. 3 days later, General Threx and loyal military units arrested Emperor Krell. The tyrant who had ruled for decades was taken into custody without ceremony. His protests and threats fell on deaf ears. Agent Bin had the honor of taking Krell into custody when Threx handed him over. The former emperor looked at the human agent with disgust. "You're nothing," Krell spat. "Your species is nothing," Bin said calmly. "But we're the nothing that destroyed your empire. How does that feel?" The trial of Emperor Krell became a galactic event. It was held in neutral space, presided over by President Murray and judges from 5 different species. The evidence was overwhelming. Documents, video recordings, Testimonies from survivors, young Una, now 15 and stronger than ever, gave the final testimony for the prosecution. She stood before the assembled court and spoke with quiet power. I was 13 when they took me. I spent 3 years as a slave. I watched children die from exhaustion and abuse. I watched guards beat a 7-year-old boy for crying. I watched friends give up hope because no one was coming to save us. She looked directly at Krell, but then Earth came. They crossed the galaxy, fought an empire, lost thousands of soldiers, and never stopped until every last one of us was safe. You thought we were nothing. You thought our lives didn't matter. You were wrong. The verdict was unanimous. Emperor Krell was found guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced to life imprisonment. He would spend his remaining years in a cell, forgotten by history. The Vorten Empire collapsed in the aftermath. Their territory was divided among the coalition forces with strict oversight to prevent future abuses. General Threx, who had ultimately done the right thing, helped establish a new government dedicated to peace and cooperation. The war was over. Now came the harder part, healing. On Earth, specialized facilities were set up to help the rescued children recover. Therapists like Biora worked with them, helping them process trauma and rebuild their lives. Some children struggled terribly. Others showed remarkable resilience. Young Hyen decided he wanted to join Earth's military when he was old enough. Someone needs to make sure this never happens again, he told Inho during a visit. I want to be part of that. Una took a different path. She enrolled in diplomatic studies, determined to use her experience to create lasting change. War brought us home, she said.
Ow!
But diplomacy will make sure no other species' children suffer like we did. Admiral Kyung-soo was appointed to lead a new coalition task force dedicated to combating slavery throughout the galaxy. His fleet, now including ships from dozens of species, patrolled known smuggling routes and raided illegal operations. Commander Inho trained soldiers from other species in rescue operations. His methods, proven in fire, became the standard across the coalition. Jiahin, Wanshik, and Youngya all took command of their own units, spreading the lessons learned through so much sacrifice. Captain Daeho, who started everything by rescuing those first 12 children, retired from active service. He established a foundation to help rescued children adjust to freedom. The Foundation's first major project was a school where former child slaves could learn and heal together. A memorial was built on Earth, a towering wall of glass and steel. On it were carved the names of every child who suffered, the 847 who survived, and the 89 who didn't. Also listed were the names of every human soldier who died bringing them home. President Murray unveiled the memorial before a crowd of thousands. Rescued children stood in places of honor, flanked by the families of fallen soldiers. We built this memorial so the galaxy will never forget, Murray said. Never forget what happened. Never forget the children who suffered. Never forget the heroes who saved them. Never forget the price we paid. She paused, looking at the assembled crowd. Let this stand as a warning to anyone, anywhere in the galaxy. Human children are not commodities. They're not resources. They're our future. And if you harm them, we will cross any distance, fight any enemy, pay any cost to bring them home. This is not a threat. It's a promise carved in stone. Years passed. The rescued children grew up. Some struggled with their trauma all their lives. Others thrived, turning their pain into purpose. They became doctors, teachers, soldiers, diplomats, artists. They married, had children of their own, and told their kids about the day Earth came to save them. Hyen, now a young man, stood on the bridge of his own ship. He was a lieutenant commander, leading patrols in the former Vorten territories. His crew was mixed species, united in their mission to protect the innocent. An alert came through. A distress signal from a cargo vessel. Hyen's crew intercepted it and found enslaved children from another species, stolen from their homeworld by new criminals who thought they could continue the old trade. Hyen looked at his crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that Earth soldiers had shown all those years ago. You know what to do, he said quietly. Prepare boarding teams. Those children are going home today. As his team moved into action, Hyen allowed himself a small smile. Earth had taught the galaxy a lesson written in fire and blood. The lesson was simple. Some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. And that lesson would never be forgotten. Across the galaxy, on countless worlds, the story was told and retold. How a primitive species from a backwater planet had shaken an empire to its foundations. How they'd fought not for conquest or glory, but for something much more powerful. Their children, the story always ended the same way, a warning passed down through generations. They didn't hold back. They never will.